The wind howled across the endless prairie, carrying with it the faint cries of a little girl who could barely keep her footing in the loose, dry soil. Her dress, once pale blue, now clung to her thin frame, stained with dirt and tears. The trail stretched endlessly in both directions, a ribbon of loneliness disappearing into the orange horizon. The wagon that had carried her for weeks was now a speck in the distance, shrinking smaller with every second, until it became nothing but dust. That wagon carried her stepmother, the woman who had promised to care for her after her father's death, but whose heart had hardened like the land they traveled. "You'll only slow us down, Clara," she'd said coldly, tossing the girl's small bundle of clothes to the ground. "We can't afford another mouth. You'll find your way." Then she had whipped the horses, never once looking back. The girl had screamed until her throat burned, running behind the wheels until her little legs gave way, collapsing into the trail dust. When silence finally fell, only the wind answered her cries. Clara was 9, too young to understand betrayal, yet old enough to feel its full sting. She hugged her rag doll, the only thing her father had ever given her, and whispered through trembling lips, "Papa said I'd never be alone." Her small voice was swallowed by the vast emptiness. As the sun began to sink, the land turned to gold, then to ash. Coyotes howled somewhere far off, and the shadows of sagebrush danced like ghosts. Clara tried to remember how her father used to guide her by the stars, telling her stories about brave cowboys and kind strangers. But all she could see were the haunting shapes of the desert and the fading trail. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Thirst cracked her lips. Each step she took felt heavier than the last. But something deep within, perhaps her father's spirit, pushed her onward. She whispered to herself, "Just one more mile." Night came quickly. The stars blinked awake, cold and sharp. Clara found an old stump and curled beside it, holding her doll close. She thought of her stepmother's words, "We can't afford you." That sentence repeated in her mind like a curse. But she also remembered her father's final promise. "There's goodness out there. Clara, the world's cruel, but it's not heartless." She clung to that thought as the darkness pressed in. Tears welled up, hot and endless, until exhaustion claimed her. By dawn, the desert had cooled, and the world glowed faintly pink. Clara woke shivering, her lips parched, her eyes swollen. In the distance, she heard hooves, slow, heavy, deliberate. She stood, wobbling. A wagon approached, this one different, grander, with polished wood and a pair of strong chestnut horses. A tall man rode alongside it, his hat tilted low against the sun. His clothes were clean, his boots shining, one the mark of wealth and respect. Clara froze, unsure whether to run or wave. The man's shadow stretched long as he stopped his horse and looked down at her. "What's a child doing out here alone?" His voice was deep, kind, but firm. Clara's lips trembled. She wanted to speak, but only a whisper came. "She left me." The man frowned, dismounting. He knelt beside her, noticing the dirt, the cuts, the way her tiny hands clutched the doll as if it were life itself. "Who left you, sweetheart?" he asked softly. "My stepmother," she replied, barely audible. "Said I slow them down." For a long moment, the man said nothing. The prairie wind whistled between them. Then he sighed and took off his hat. "Name's Wyatt Carson," he said. "I own the Silver Creek Ranch about 20 miles west." "You can't stay out here, not with the coyotes and the cold nights. Come on." Clara hesitated. Her father had always warned her to be careful of strangers. But there was something in this man's eyes, a steadiness, a sorrow that made her trust him. When he reached out his hand, she took it slowly and he lifted her onto his horse. "We'll get you cleaned up and then we'll figure things out," he said. As they rode toward the west, the wind carried away the last traces of her tears. For the first time in days, she felt warmth that wasn't from the sun, a quiet comfort, fragile but real. Wyatt didn't speak much, but Clara could tell by the way he adjusted his pace and checked on her. Every few minutes that he cared, more than his rugged face showed. By the time they reached his ranch, the sky had turned violet. The house stood tall, surrounded by corrals, barns, and the hum of life. Ranch hands greeted Wyatt respectfully, tipping their hats, but when they saw the girl, their smiles faded with confusion. "Found her out by the east trail," Wyatt told them. "Poor child's been left to die." Inside, the warmth of a crackling fire made Clara's eyes widen. The smell of bread and stew filled the air, and for the first time since her father's death she felt safe. Wyatt called for his housekeeper, an elderly woman named Martha, who gasped when she saw Clara's condition. "Lord have mercy," Martha whispered. "She's skin and bone," Wyatt nodded. "Get her something to eat, then clean her up. We'll talk later." As Clara ate, she watched the firelight flicker against the walls, wondering if this was real. Could kindness still exist after everything she'd lost? Later that night, wrapped in a warm blanket, she whispered to the doll, "Maybe Papa sent him." Outside, Wyatt sat on the porch staring at the moon. He'd buried his own daughter years ago. Fever had taken her before her 10th birthday. Seeing Clara had reopened wounds he thought long sealed. But there was something about her courage, her quiet eyes that stirred something deep inside him. Maybe fate had led him down that trail for a reason. Days turned into weeks. Clara recovered slowly. She helped Martha with chores, learned the names of the horses, and started smiling again, though the shadow of her abandonment still lingered. Wyatt grew protective of her, but he also kept his distance, afraid to grow attached. Yet every time she laughed, something in his chest softened. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Clara approached him with her doll. "Mr. Carson," she said shyly, "Papa used to say that people who help others are angels in disguise. Are you one?" Wyatt smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a man trying to do right." She tilted her head. "Then maybe you're the right kind of man." The word struck him deeper than she knew. That night, he found himself staring at the empty chair where his daughter used to sit, realizing that perhaps life was giving him another chance, not to replace what he'd lost, but to heal what was broken. But fate wasn't done testing them. One dusty afternoon, a rider arrived at the ranch, Clara's stepmother. Her wagon was broken, her face hardened, her tone demanding. "That girl belongs to me," she snapped. "She's my husband's child, and I've come to claim her." The air turned thick. Clara, hearing her voice, froze behind the door. Wyatt's jaw tightened. "You left her to die," he said evenly. "That forfeits any claim you ever had." The woman sneered. "You think you can just keep her?" "You think money makes you a father?" Wyatt stepped closer, his eyes like steel. "No," he said quietly, "but love does." The woman's face twisted with rage, but when Wyatt's ranch hands appeared behind him, she knew she was outnumbered. She spat on the ground, climbed onto her wagon, and rode off into the sunset, cursing under her breath. Clara ran to Wyatt, tears streaming down her face. He knelt, wiped them gently, and said, "She can't hurt you anymore." She threw her arms around him, whispering, "Please don't send me away." He hugged her tightly, his voice trembling. "Never!" As night fell over Silver Creek Ranch, the stars glowed brighter than ever. Clara looked out her window, holding her doll, whispering, "Thank you, Papa, for sending me him." Down below, Wyatt sat by the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes that had seen loss, pain, and now hope. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew this much. He'd found something worth protecting again. And somewhere in the quiet of that wide Texas sky, two hearts, and one broken by grief, the other by betrayal, began to heal in the warmth of new beginnings.